When they arrived here nearly 3,000 years ago, the coastal settlers of Goa were struck with a huge problem. Each high tide brought the sea and river water into their farmland and submerged it. So after much thinking, they built a brilliant engineering marvel. It was a series of embankments and sluice gates along the tidal rivers. During high tide, the gates opened automatically to let enough water into the fields and then closed. And when the tide receded, the gates reopened and let the water withdraw. The problem was solved. The marshy land that was saved from flooding bloomed into lush paddy fields, or khazans, as they came to be known. And then there was no looking back. The foundation that made civilized life possible in Goa had just been laid. Today, some of these ancient embankments stand next to a very modern city, Panjim, the capital of Goa. A tiny city housing barely 100,000 people, but an untiring city hosting nearly 2.5 million tourists every year who come here in search of a perfect holiday. However, those who live in Panjim have a different story to tell, only if someone heard them out.
It's a beautiful city. You can see it even till today. And what we feel bad about is what it was and what it is becoming.
Embraced by the monsoon, this is Panjim at its best. Its khazan fields drenched in rain and its salt pans full to the brim. These are lands where salt is harvested during summers. Khazans and salt pans are not just a lifeline for small farmers. They are Panjim's anti-flooding systems. But in a city where every piece of land is prime real estate, many khazan lands have been neatly buried under concrete.
What's going wrong in Panjim, firstly, is unplanned development. There's sort of encroachment into the field areas, which have been sort of the open spaces and lungs of the city. So that's a lot of pressure coming up on eco-sensitive zones.
Sanjit Rodrigues, the municipal commissioner of Panjim, says it is his worst nightmare. A cloudburst on Alteen Hill. It's the hub of Panjim, overloaded with critical government infrastructure and housing.
The hill was one of the sponges of the city. It is to hold a lot of water, and we had actual springs at the bottom of the hill, which is today the city. Pressures of development have over the years seen that a lot of construction has come on the slopes of this hill. The slopes have become unstable, there have been landslides, and a lot of built up area has resulted into a faster and a more volume of runoff of rainwater. The carrying capacity of our water bodies, which were catchment areas, be it creeks, be it lakes, be it our river itself, siltation is a huge problem.
The creeks of Panjim are yet another safety net as they absorb the high tide waters of the Mandvi River. But what has become of them today? The Santines Creek is perhaps the biggest civic tragedy of Panjim. This was the drainage lifeline during monsoon. Now, it has very little capacity left to flush storm water. And finally, it's the beaches. Panjim is barely a couple of beaches, but what happens in its neighbouring beaches is of serious concern.
My major concern is the way the sand dunes are getting degraded. They are being bulldozed, raised, all for the sake of the commercial activity. Goa is the only place, not in India, in the world, where beach shacks are allowed. This is something that I personally don't understand. Our linear beaches are backed by sand dunes. Sand dunes are known as nature's first line of defense. Now we know how sand dunes came to the rescue of populations after the tsunami. Wherever the dunes were high, it just blocked the tsunami. The high wave banged the dune. Although the dune got damaged, it got uprooted, it got raised, but it helped the populations behind. If this dune had not been here, the monsoonal waves would have reached right into the city. So this is how dunes...
So these are the stories that the people of Panjim want to tell. About its hills and fields packed with buildings, its creeks and lakes choked and polluted, and its surrounding beaches raised and flattened. When the monsoon lashes the city and the river is swelling with high tide, storm water has nowhere to go. It can neither reach the river nor can it drain or seep within the city. The worst impact is then borne by the low-lying slums of the city. And as always, it's the poor who pay the price. The warning bells are ringing loud. But is Panjim living in a state of trance? Because elsewhere, coastal cities in other parts of the world are getting very worried.
We have a rising sea level in Maryland about twice the global average.
NASA's lead polar ice researcher said, quote, "This is really happening. There's nothing to stop it now."
Florida officials are now predicting that the sea level will rise at an alarming rate.
It's easy to see why Maldivians are worried about climate change. With alarming predictions of global sea level rise, the Maldives could be in deep trouble very soon.
So what could a rising sea mean for Panjim? In a worst-case scenario, scientists predict the global sea levels to rise by 1 meter over the next 100 years. Terry's analysis for Panjim indicates that if a 1 meter sea level rise in Panjim is combined with extreme rainfall, it will flood both from the coast and inland. Large areas including Ribandar, Pato, Fontaineish, Niyoginagar, Santines, Lakampal, Miramar, Karanzile and Donapola are likely to be inundated or waterlogged. And this is what the city would look like. This means many of the natural assets like Khazan lands, creeks and estuaries, sand dunes and beaches in the northern part of the city are likely to be submerged. Critical services in these areas like water supply, sewerage, power supply and telecommunications are likely to be hampered. Key transport infrastructure like the Pato Bridge may take a beating. And finally, all the beachfront hotels that stand charmingly on the coast may have to reckon with a very, very angry sea. So while this is a story from the west coast of India, let's now travel to a city on the east coast, to Visakhapatnam, or Vizag as it's commonly called. Once a traditional fishing town, now famous as a dream investment destination. It has one of the largest and busiest seaports of India, and along with it, a massive hub of industry, some 6,600 large and small industries, including oil, petrochemicals, steel, cement and power giants. Not surprising then that Vizag has earned some other credentials as well. In 2009, Vizag made headlines as one of the most critically polluted clusters in the country. Its air was choked with dust of coal, its drinking water was laced with traces of heavy metal, and its beaches were polluted with effluents and plastic. So while there is already enough for Vizag's citizens to deal with, there are some more worries knocking at their door. It was an early morning shock for people who turned up for a walk on Vizag's famous beach road. The sea had surged closer to the road and swallowed the landmass under the footpath. While erosion and accretion of sand on a beach is a natural process, the severe erosion of Vizag's beaches has raised many questions.
Visakhapatnam port is constructed in 1933. Outer harbour has come in 1976. After that, recently 95, 96 onwards, Gangavaram port has come on the south of the Visakhapatnam port. After that, Kakinada port is there. So, number of ports are coming on the coast. And now state government is also planning for some more ports in this coast. All these man-made structures in the sea will have definitely effect on this coast. That is the reason erosion you are seeing all the time. Of course, erosion is not a new thing, it is a common in every coast. But now it is increasing because of the structures.
It wasn't even a cyclone, just a rough sea during monsoon, coupled with a full moon.
సముద్రం ఉద్రేకంగా పెద్ద అలలుగా వచ్చి ఒకరోజుకి క్రమేపీ ఇంటి దగ్గరకు వచ్చి 11-12 గంటల ప్రాంతంలో ఒక రోజు ఒక ముక్కగాను రెండో రోజు రెండో ముక్కగాను మూడో రోజు సగం పార్ట్గా పడిపోవడం జరిగింది.
G. Elia's love for the sea is unshakable. But he knows the sea may not allow them to live here for too long.
యాక్చువల్లీ సముద్రం మాకు డిస్టెన్స్ చాలా దూరంగా ఉండేది. 40 years బ్యాక్ అయితే మేము సముద్రుడికి వెళ్ళాలంటే ఒక 10 నిమిషాలు గోనుగుడ్లు వేసుకుని బీచ్కి వెళ్ళేవాళ్ళం. క్రమేపీ 10 ఏళ్ల తర్వాత సముద్రం మా దగ్గరికి వచ్చేసింది. తర్వాత మాకు ఇక్కడ కొబ్బరి మొక్కలు అన్నీ ఉండేవి, అవి కూడా సముద్రంలో కలిసిపోయి తర్వాత మళ్ళీ ఇల్లులు వచ్చాయి. ఇల్లు కూడా సముద్రంలో 82 నుంచి క్రమేపీ ఒక సంవత్సరానికి ఒక ఇల్లు 2 ఇల్లు చొప్పున అట్లా పోతా జరుగుతూ ఉంది. సుమారుగా మాకు తెలిసింది ఇప్పటి వరకు గత మేలో కూడా 3 ఇల్లు, ఒక మన ఆర్సీసీ రేకిల్లు కూడాను 2 కమలీలు కూడా వెళ్ళిపోవడం జరిగింది. యాక్చువల్లీ మనకైతే సైంటిఫిక్స్ ప్రకారం మాకు కూడా ఇలా సైంటిస్టులు వచ్చినప్పుడు 100 yearకి 1 meter సముద్రం పెరుగుతుందని చెప్తున్నారు. కానీ అలా కాకుండా ఈ మంగమారపేటలో 1 yearకి 1 meter ఇంక్రీజ్ అవుతూ పెరుగుకుంటూ వచ్చింది తప్ప
The waves were higher than those seen during the tsunami. The walls of Vizag's fishing harbour finally gave way. It was a small price to pay for what was India's worst cyclone in 14 years, Cyclone. For Andhra Pradesh, Cyclone was one more addition in its tally of 60 cyclones in 4 decades. And now, climate scientists are warning us that as the sea waters will get warmer, there is a high likelihood of increase in cyclonic events and their intensity on the east coast of India. So what if a severe cyclone hits the dense jungle of infrastructure in Vizag? Scientific literature indicates that such a cyclone can cause a maximum surge of 4 to 6 meters over and above the mean sea level. In such a scenario, nearly 22 wards near the coast and further inland are likely to be inundated. All critical infrastructure and services of the city falling within these wards are likely to be affected. The city's transport infrastructure, including its airport, railway station and the national and state highway, may be vulnerable. But the biggest brunt will be borne by Vizag's mighty industry. Its most valuable assets, the Visakhapatnam port, the Gangavaram port and the naval dockyard, may take a beating. Some of the other big giants which may be vulnerable are the HPCL refinery, the Visakhapatnam steel plant and the NTPC plant. It's the worst urban nightmare of the 21st century. Climate events ripping off infrastructure and services of modern cities. And we know it's already happening. So then, are there any answers?
It basically looks at impact of sea level rise.
A group of climate scientists and urban planners from Delhi attempted to find some answers for the city governments of Panjim and Vizag.
Through the results of the study, we strongly feel that the city should equip itself and start planning for climate resilience at this moment right now.
The first tool handed over to Panjim and Vizag is a spatial inventory, marking out all infrastructure assets and service networks that are likely to be vulnerable to climate risks.
If these areas can be left out of settlement zoning or any other developable zoning, a lot of lives can be saved, properties can be saved.
Next, Terry has devised a smart database management system that guides the city authorities to gather specific data that alerts it to climate risks and prepares it for safeguarding its infrastructure.
You know, being a public body, we are very poor in data collection. And data is all that you need today to work, develop, plan for the future. I think the inventarization of both the natural and man-made assets which is going on and which Terry has initiated and done for our city would go a long way in building a plan for maintaining these assets for our future. Prioritization in terms of funding, in terms of budgetary allocation, in terms of proving to financial authorities that this is where our money should lie in and should go is important. And for this inventarization would help us a big deal.
When somebody comes and applies in the same in near to coast, we should be able to have enough data to tell that yes, these are the risk areas, so we cannot avoid it. So Terry's studies and their findings will definitely come to as a handy tool as far as this particular area is concerned.
The sea has been kind to the people of Panjim and Vizag so far. But now it's only beginning to share its distress. So will Panjim and Vizag pay heed? Or will they sleepwalk into an unsafe future? The choice is theirs.
Good evening. Welcome to the Buck Stops here. I'm Vishnu Shoma. On the program this evening, Cyclone Hudhud is gaining speed. The latest forecast is for landfall tomorrow. Winds gusting now up to 195 kilometers per hour. Evacuations have begun in coastal Andhra Pradesh. Its impact is likely to be felt in the districts of Visakhapatnam, Vizianagaram and Srikakulam. Wind speeds gusting to 195 kilometers per hour moves in the direction of Andhra Pradesh and South Odisha. We ask, are we ready to face this potential disaster? Is India prepared?
But normal life thrown out of gear in Visakhapatnam, the port cities without power supplies since Saturday night, and communication systems have collapsed at many places. Fuel and even essential commodities are scarce.
Without any doubt, there is a sense of panic, of complete panic in Andhra Pradesh. People rushing off with these food supplies.
Cyclone Hudhud has left the city of Visakhapatnam battered and bruised, its airport torn apart without a roof. Power supplies and communication lines are still down and people are living their lives one day at a time.